Welcome back. It was a joint editorial that packed quite a punch today, the decision from three of the UK's biggest Jewish newspapers to launch a major criticism of Jeremy Corbyn. Well, it's brought a mixed response. The Jewish Chronicle, Jewish News and Jewish Telegraph are all warning that a government led by the Labour leader would pose an existential threat to Jewish life in the UK. So, how accurate is that view? To discuss, I'm joined now by Simon Johnson, the Chief Executive of the Jewish Leadership Council, and Aaron Bastani, co-founder of Novara Media, an organisation that aims to address those issues that it feels will define the 21st century. Gentlemen, many thanks for being with us. Simon, can I turn to you first? We know that Jeremy Corbyn has admitted that there has been anti-Semitism within the party. We know that they are taking steps to try to deal with it. But the idea that Jeremy Corbyn is an existential, or Jeremy Corbyn government, I should say, is an existential threat to Jewish life in the United Kingdom, I mean, in what way is that not hyperbolic?
Well, I think what's interesting is that you're seeing some unprecedented things within the Jewish community. I mean, irrespective of what they've said, it is unprecedented for three community newspapers to have the same headline, the same story, the same editorial, just as it was unprecedented for 68 rabbis from across the spectrum of religion last week to write to the Labour leadership, asking them to adopt the IHRA definition against anti-Semitism. And in the same way that 2,000 people came out onto Parliament Square at the end of March to say enough is enough. Jewish community, I think, doesn't seek the spotlight, but I think this indicates the strength of feeling, the degree to which the Labour Party has lost the confidence of the community.
But just on the point that I made, I mean, seriously, in what way is a Jeremy Corbyn government an existential threat to Jewish life in the United Kingdom? And, you know, the words have been played with a little bit there. We know what they mean, though. In what way is he that?
I think what you're seeing there is a real strength of feeling. I think that within the Jewish community, as I said, the reason I talked about the unprecedented unity that there is I, in my 51 years, have never known anything like this. I've never known such a degree of concern about a party. And if you think who it is, it's a party that was built on equality, that was built on fighting racism, that was built on social justice, and yet it has lost the confidence of a very, very large sector of a community. And what's, I think, fascinating, and what I think has influenced a lot of the media coverage, is that you've got members of Parliament, including the Parliamentary Labour Party and the Shadow Cabinet, who are very concerned to see that this is the impact that it's having upon the Jewish community. And I think that these editorials reflect the real strength of opinion that there is within the Jewish community.
I mean, Aaron Bastani, I mean, I don't need to ask you whether you believe a Jeremy Corbyn government is an existential threat to Jewish life in the United Kingdom, but at the same time, when you have the Board of Deputies, when you have these three Jewish newspapers, when you have British jury, essentially, coming together and saying there is a real issue with anti-Semitism in the party, Jeremy Corbyn should have adopted the working definition as laid out by the IHRA. I mean, what do you know that British jury doesn't?
Well, we have a Conservative government at the moment. My father's a Muslim. I believe the Conservative Party is deeply Islamophobic. I don't believe that they're an existential threat to Muslims in this country. So your first point about hyperbole, I would agree with. That's not to erase the very real issue which is being raised more broadly. I've been on the television to say quite publicly and openly that there are issues in the Labour Party that need to be dealt with. However, there is a significant amount of misinformation in regards to this. So, for instance, the definition in and of itself has been adopted by the Labour Party since late 2016. If you were to ask most of your viewers, what's this actually about in regard to the IHRA, they wouldn't know. They're not informed. So the real question is around these examples. There are 11. 8 have been repeated verbatim from the IHRA, Indeed. And they are proposed to go into the Labour Code of Conduct. Then you've got 2.5, which basically are verbatim repeated with a bit more added on. The only one that's particularly contentious is the idea that in the example, which seems to me actually to be at odds with what's claimed more broadly elsewhere in the IHRA, is to say, if one claims that Israel is a racist state, that is an anti-Semitic statement.
That's not an example. That's not an example provided by that. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you there, because that's not an example. It's claiming the existence of the State of Israel is a racist endeavour. There are people like, for example, Yachad, a Jewish group which campaigns against racist policies put forward by the Israeli government. They are entirely behind the IHRA. You can say under the IHRA document, that under that example, you can say there are racist policies being advanced by the Israeli government. It's not to do with that.
And in Labour's proposed code of conduct, it has that, but it's about intent rather than the precision of what people are saying. If somebody says something and the intent is clear and you can infer reasonably that what they're saying was intended to be anti-Semitic, then yes, it will be. But if a Palestinian says Israel was founded as a racist state with the Nakba, the removal of people, all sorts of things. America was founded on all manner of sins. I'm not saying Israel is unique in that regard, but I don't think it makes...
That is something that's not covered by the that's not covered by the IRI.
No, you just repeated verbatim what I said. What's the 11th example given then in regard to self-determination?
Claiming the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavour. That means everything from the foundation of the Israeli state.
So if a Palestinian says that, they're being anti-Semitic. Do you really believe that? After the Nakba, after massacres, after the Irgun in the 1940s used terrorist violence against the British occupying forces and Palestinians? Do you really believe that?
This is a point, Simon, we have to say, that is being made by a number of people and within the Jewish community as well. You know, the idea that there is, institutionalised, indirect racism around the world. But actually, if you look at what Israel has done within the law, discrimination has been built in. Palestinians within the pre-1967 borders, second-class citizens, and other parts, they're basically under Israeli state control. Aaron has a point.
I'm not entirely sure why Aaron thinks, or that the Labour leadership think, that they know more about how to define racism and anti-Semitism than the people who are the victims of it, the Jewish community. I think what's fascinating here is that Labour has tried to impose its own version of a code that has been internationally accepted and widely accepted across this country. I will address the point you've raised, but I want to say something clearly to the Labour Party. They say that they have adopted the Chakrabarti report. On page 1 of the Chakrabarti report, they say that the Labour Party must hold themselves to a higher standard than all other parties. And yet the IHRA definition that Aaron is taking issue with, and I'll explain why that's wrong in a moment, has been adopted by the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, the government here, the Crown Prosecution Service, National Union of Students, and 120 local authorities. Now, the IHRA definition allows for the most virulent criticism of the State of Israel. What it talks about is that in certain examples, depending on the context, that could be anti-Semitic.
But as Aaron says, doesn't Israel deserve special treatment? That's
not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. There are many states who are guilty of not allowing for equality under the law for a range of peoples. I don't think Israel's unique in doing that. To highlight that behaviour as institutionalised within state authorities, it's clearly true in regard to Israel. Yes, of course it is. It's true in regards to Iran with its Kurdish minority.
But in terms of the McPherson principle, why shouldn't the minority be allowed to decide exactly what to define the racism that
Palestine's
they face?
a minority too. Don't they have the right to self-determination?
No, it's not to define the racism.
No, but I believe Israel has a right to self-determination. I also believe that Palestine has a right to self-determination. If a Palestinian activist says this was a state, this state, not a modern Israel state in the abstract, this particular state was founded within a broader racist movement, I do not believe a Palestinian activist who says that, who's committed to peace, who's committed to a two-state solution, is an anti-Semite. No, I think that's grossly incorrect.
So if I could come in there, it's for those reasons, what I believe are ideological reasons, why the Labour Party has watered down very key elements of the IHRA definition, as well as watering down the way that people can talk about Israel. And IRA left a whole load of space for that. The Labour Code doesn't say that it's anti-Semitic to accuse me or anybody like me of being more loyal to Israel or to Zionism or to other Jews than I am to my own country. And that's why we have such an issue as a community with the Labour Party deciding that it knows better than we do how to define the racism that we suffer.
Anna, I just want to ask you a quick point. Do you understand why some people feel that the Labour leadership is dragging its heels? Because they can point to evidence. For example, Seamus Milne, 2009, saying during an address to a rally, the creation of Israel was in and of itself a crime.
I mean, 700,000 people were forcibly removed from their homes. That was obviously not a good thing. Should Jewish people have the right to self-determination, a homeland of their own? Absolutely. But clearly, if we're looking at historical events from 1945-46 all the way through to today, clearly there are things that I think are unforgivable. Israel, in that regard, is not unique. The British state has done innumerable terrible things, far more. Same with the United States, same with France, same with Italy. But the idea that we can sort of just pretend that Israel was not guilty of those crimes, I think, is to actually not be fair to them. It's to treat them unequally as a nation state.
I am terribly sorry, chaps. We are going to have to leave it there, but we will be revisiting this, I'm sure, time and again, because there's clearly, on both sides, deeply held feelings and views. Simon Johnson and Bastani, thanks very much indeed.